Thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. And here's your host, Chris Cebollero.
Well, this is it, and here we go with another great edition of the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. Everybody out there, hope you're having a great summer, and you're really making this summer count. Hopefully you've taken some classes, or hopefully you've set some goals, and hopefully you're reaching those goals. And that's really what we try to talk about here on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, is giving you the tools that you need to take your professional development to the next step. You know, so as I go through the process of chatting with people and wanting to become guests on the show, I mean, you never know who you're going to meet. And today, I thought it would be really interesting to think about as we kind of figure out the next steps in our life and the goals that we want to attain and, you know, kind of the brass ring. What's at the top? What's at the top of our goal list that we really want to do? And sometimes we're hampered by fear of getting outside our comfort zones and taking us to a place where we need to get that next step or get to that next level. And sometimes we set goals for ourselves, but you know what? It's those stories that we tell ourselves. It's that fear, it's that anxiety, you know, the fear of the unknown that keeps us now from getting to that next level and doing the things that we need to do. You know, sometimes when I'm speaking to groups, one of the things I'll say to them is, if you knew that you can do one thing and not fail at it, what would it be? And one of the best answers I heard somebody said was everything. Well, the realization is we're going to fail. The realization is name the one thing that you've ever done that you did great the very first time. I know I don't have any of those. So our guest today is really going to talk about how she put those fears aside to really reach her goals and reach the dreams of what she wanted to attain. This is what I'm really excited for today. So I am going to introduce Tricia Brouk. In addition to working in the entertainment industry, Tricia applies her expertise as a director, as a writer for film, for television, for theater, to the art of public speaking. I mean, think about this. I mean, this is a great resume that I'm reading already, and I'm just excited for it. She's an executive producer. She's a creative director of TEDx Lincoln Square. She's choreographed Black Box on ABC, The Affair on Showtime, Rescue Me on Fox. I mean, I'm just excited about this because here is a lady that went from St. Louis, Missouri to New York City to make her dreams come true. And I didn't even get through half of her bio and what she attained. And I can't even wait anymore. Tricia, come on in here and say hello to the listeners.
Hey, Chris, I am so excited to be here with you. And that was an incredible introduction. I don't even know what to say, except thank you and for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And really, when we think about the Ultimate Leadership Podcast, we try to find, you know, great leadership topics that we're going to talk about. And really, we're not focusing on leadership today as much as we're focusing on your success, but how you overcame the fear of getting to your success. And the reason that I thought it would be great to chat with you, Tricia, is because there's a lot of us out there that have these goals that don't really take advantage of reaching those goals because of that fear. And I think that that's where your expertise is going to come in today.
Well, I love that you say I overcame fear. I'd like to actually rephrase that and say I embrace fear. Every single day, I have to make a decision about something that could potentially end in failure. And I love to think about it in terms of embracing my fear, embracing my self-judgment, embracing my inability to believe I can do it. Every single day, I embrace that fear and I try to kick ass.
And I think that that's a really great way to put it because, you know, fear is the stories that we tell ourselves. And if we're able to grab hold of those stories, we are able to embrace them and then make the next steps. But I want to let the listeners know how we got here. So basically the things that we were talking about as we were discussing, you know, topics and things, we found out that I'm now living in St. Louis and you're from St. Louis. You're now living in New York City. I'm from New York City. And I guess, you know, the question that I came to from the very first moment was, you know, how did you overcome that fear? And that's what really got us on this topic of you making this big launch of moving to New York City and making your dreams come true. And I think that's incredibly amazing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for telling your audience how we met. When we first connected, I saw that your area code was 314, and that's the area code I grew up having. So I knew that you were from St. Louis, and I loved being able to connect with you about that. And then finding out you were from Queens made it even more cool because we have this sort of we've crossed paths and now we've reconnected in many ways. So I moved to New York City when I was 20 years old, knowing from a very young age, I would say probably 13, that I would move to the city to become a dancer, to pursue my dance career, to potentially take the stage with Baryshnikov, if you will. And I have to be honest, I did work with Misha, and it was really
did you
cool.
really?
Yes, that was an amazing moment when I was in the studio with Lucinda Childs, one of the dance companies I worked with, and we were both warming up on the floor, about to do a piece, and I thought to myself, I had a poster of you on my wall, like every other young dancer, and here I am sitting next to you, warming up like every old dancer about to take the stage.
How awesome is that?
It was very cool.
So from a very young age, you knew you wanted to pursue your goals. So now, 20 years old, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the show me state, and now you're heading to the Big Apple, the Great White Way. I mean, what was the apprehension? I mean, what were you feeling when you decided to leave the state of Missouri to head to New York City?
Finally.
Oh, really? So you were excited.
I was so excited. I was not planning to go to college. I was going to graduate from high school and move directly to the city and pursue a dance career. My parents talked me into going to school, and it was the best decision I made because I had a 3-year conservatory program at Stevens College where I learned many more dance forms. I was able to mature a little bit. I got a few skills under my belt. And then when I moved to the city, I had much more awareness and maturity, and I was ready to really take it on fully. Got myself a job, started taking dance classes, and lived the dream. And I'm still living my dream.
That's awesome. And it's great that you can say that. I mean, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, is what they say. So now when you get to New York City, I mean, did you know anybody? I mean, what was the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome, coming to a city that really eats you up and spits you out?
This is a great question because I did have a big obstacle when I first moved here. I came to the city with $750. My rent was $325, and that is nothing now. But it was a lot of money. And my best friend from college graduated a year earlier. He got us an apartment. He said, I've got us a 2-bedroom. It's in the East Village on 3rd Street between C and D. And this was a long time ago. That was not really a safe location. So I arrive. All of my boxes are being shipped UPS. I did not come with a suitcase preparing to go home. I moved here preparing to stay. So I show up. The apartment is a closet. I could barely fit a single futon into this room. And I had already given him a deposit and $325. So I basically had $225 left to my name. I immediately moved out, did not get the money back. Our friendship ended, and it was a very great learning experience because you have to be aware, you have to know when it's time to move on from something or somebody. And I learned very quickly that in New York City, apartments will ruin relationships. Be very clear on where you're going to live and who you're going to live with.
That's very true.
And
very true.
Yeah. So that was my first obstacle. I used all my money up the very first week I was in New York City. So I had to get a job real quick. So luckily, a teacher from Stevens was living here, and she let me live with her for a month for free until I was able to get a job and pay her rent. And at that time, it was on 90th and Broadway, and I walked down to 86th and Broadway and got a job at an Italian restaurant called Pazzo. I'd waited tables in Missouri before, so I had some experience. I got hired right away because I'm from the Midwest, and I'm smiley, and I'm nice, and you can trust me. So I got my job at a restaurant, and I got my scholarship at Paul Taylor and the Cunningham Studio, and I became a concert dancer and had a very solid career. Got a job with Lucinda Childs, toured Europe. Then I started my own company and realized I don't want to work for anybody else anymore. So I want to have a career in performing arts and showbiz, but I also am not interested in being a starving artist. I like a nice dry martini. I like to take myself out to dinner. So I started my own company 26 years ago.
And I think that's one of the things that I really want to kind of focus on now. Because when you talk, I mean, I didn't get through half your bio. I mean, some of the things that you've done, I mean, you have series that have won Best Comedy Awards. You know, you're a established author with Inc. magazine, the Huffington Post. And, you know, you're working in, New York City, and you're really kind of doing the things. You have your own podcast, The Big Talk, that's on iTunes. So really, at what point, and I think that was a great segment, at one point you decided to start your own company. I mean, what was the catalyst then? I mean, you kind of said, I didn't want to work for anybody else, but didn't that give you a little bit of trepidation now to say, I'm going to go ahead and hang out my own shingle and start my own business?
It did give me trepidation because at that point I had become a certified personal trainer, and I had a large group of clients. And I knew that if I went on tour, those clients would either leave me for somebody else, or I could start a company and I could make money while I was on the road. And that's what I did. And it was literally not having fear over losing those clients, not having fear over failing at starting a business. I just did it. And if I failed, I would try again. And I luckily hired the right people and had the right clients. And the clients are still with me 26 years later. Many of those trainers are still working for me, because when I was working for other people, I knew that I wanted to be treated a certain way. I knew that I wanted to be able to be subbed out. I knew that it wasn't my responsibility to solicit new clients. So I started a business that took care of my trainers. They could sub out for any reason they wanted, no questions asked. I never asked them to solicit new business for me. They could take time off and go dance at the Rockettes for 3 months at a time if they wanted. So I created this business based around the model that I would want to work for. And it has been incredibly successful. So had I been afraid to fail at that, I wouldn't have this company that's been able to support me and my career for over 26 years.
Right. And it's funny because you're only 25 years old. So, but here's the thing that I want to touch on, Trish, as well, is that, at this point in time, we've really kind of taken you from Missouri into New York City and, kind of shown your success. So at this point in time, if we're going to just talk to the audience to say they have goals and they have dreams, how do they put together this plan to now think about reaching for that brass ring that kind of you set off to do? So how do they now start the process of saying, this is what I should look for to reach this goal?
I think the first thing one needs to consider is, are they prepared? Have you done the homework? Have you done the research? And are you ready to take the next level? If you've done the homework, done the research, and you are completely prepared and are the expert in the field you're about to start a business in, then the next level is to just go for it, to just do it. And if you make a mistake along the way, ask someone for help. If you don't know how to do something, ask someone who knows more than you for the answer. And that is something I've learned along the way. I have to hire people who know how to embed codes. I have to hire people who know what SEO is. It's not something I want to spend my time doing. It's not what I'm good at. So I hire them, or I find somebody to help me do that.
I think that those are really great points. So now as we transition, your new company is The Big Talk. So what is it that you learned from your first company that allowed you now to bring it into something new and hopefully make it even more successful?
The power of social media. That is something that I've learned in the last year and has exploded my Big Talk company. Brouk Moves, my fitness company that's been around for 26 years, has always been word of mouth. I've had a very successful company, wonderful trainers, excellent clients, and I've never advertised. And I was never on Facebook, and I'm still not personally on Facebook. The Big Talk is on Facebook, Brouk Moves is on Facebook, but Tricia Brouk is not. I am only interested in using social media for my businesses. So when I started the Big Talk, I didn't realize the power behind LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I didn't realize that people are actually really driven to these social media platforms to promote their business, show people who they are behind their business, and also to connect. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned from my first company, Brouk Moves, 26 years ago, to the Big Talk, which is only a year and a half old. The power of social media exists, and you need to take advantage of it. And if you're scared of it, like I was, it's time to let go of the fear. Who cares if the picture isn't perfect? Who cares if there's a typo? You can fix it. Who cares if somebody's hating on you? You can delete that post. People, you are not going to please everybody all the time. But if your message is consistent and you use social media as a positive force in your business and in your life, it will serve you.
And I got to tell you, I mean, that is a science, because I've certainly, needed to use social media in my business as well. And I've fallen flat on my face. I've developed something that I thought was going to be a great marketing tool for my business, only to find out it got no views, it got no likes, it got, and it's a science like anything else, and I think that that's really important when you figure that out. And you're saying that, regardless of the fear, regardless of the failure, fall down 4 times, get up 5.
Yes. And the more you are on the platforms, and choose 1 or 2 that you love. If you love Twitter, stay on Twitter. If you love Instagram, stay on Instagram. You don't need to be on all of them. Be on 2 or 3 and understand them and use those well. I have just started using Facebook Live. It's a great way to promote my webinars for the Big Talk. And it's scary because it's live and I usually rush and I'm talking really fast, and I realize people are there to support you. If you slow down and you're yourself and you have something to share with them and you really want to give them something that's of use, they will stick around and they will like it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Now, maybe just a little bit about the Big Talk. So tell us about what your company does, because I think it's really important for the next set of questions I want to ask you.
Sure. So I started the Big Talk in August of last year. It was out of directing Petra Kolber's TEDx Syracuse. She'd come to many of my shows and was a fan of my work, and she asked me to direct her TEDx. And I thought, that sounds fun, just like any other play or one-woman show. So I started the Big Talk, realizing there was a need for public speakers to help them identify, craft, and deliver signature talks. So over the last year, I started working on the Big Talk and getting clients and helping them become more comfortable writing, become more comfortable performing. And then I realized, well, I would really love to give these speakers a platform. So I think I'll apply for a TEDx license. And I did, and it took about 3 months, and I was granted my license as an organizer, and it's called TEDx Lincoln Square. And Jamie Broderick and I are co-producers. She is the director of marketing, and I'm the creative director. And our first TEDx event was last March, and we have another event coming up March 27th, and the theme this year is called Looking Beyond.
That's awesome. That's really great. And I think that, I get those calls as well for people who want to, really do well in their presentations. And, you talk about a fear, and that's something really to overcome when you stand in front of people and you want to be able to inform them, to entertain them, to persuade them. And that really is one of those things that I think is needed in for those entrepreneurs and those potential folks who want to become great speakers. But, listening to you, I mean, you give me a sense of excitement. I think you're a positive role model. And I guess the question I want to ask you is, do you feel like you've always been a leader?
I feel like I've always wanted to serve people or help people. And if I lead, they can see how to also be great leaders. I believe that I do lead people to see the best of who they can be. And I think that I'm a natural leader. I tend to not be a follower, that's for sure. If there's a large group of people going in one direction, I will go in the opposite direction. I'm not one of the sheep. So I guess I always have been a leader.
So now when we take that expertise and you take that experience and you've taken all those lessons that you have, and now you're teaching people how to, speak. One of the biggest things that people will say is that fear. What's your secret, or what tips do you have for speakers of how they can maybe embrace or overcome that fear of speaking in front of other people?
I think the first thing that you have to do is acknowledge that you have fear, and it can be as intense as the word terror. Know that it's there, allow it to be there, try not to attach to it, and you have to rehearse so that when that fear comes up, you don't fall apart. So know that it's going to happen, acknowledge that it's going to be there. Don't run from it, and make sure that you show up on the stage fully rehearsed so that when that fear creeps up, you can acknowledge it. The fear's here, and then you can let it go. Then the other thing that's important to remember is if you make it about you and allow the fear to control you, your message is not going to be heard by the audience. So you have to keep coming back to your message, and that's what's important. Giving your message as a gift to the audience. You can't let fear get in the way, or your message will not be heard.
Yeah, I think those are very, very great tips. And, you said in the beginning, when I talked about how did you overcome the fear to, get to New York City, you said, you don't have fear, you embrace fear, or you don't overcome it. But how do you manage your fear? Because, even in the things that you're doing, I got to think now at this stage in your career, you've had so many successes that there can't be any failures on top of that. I mean, you really have got to keep this momentum going, especially in a career that I guess you really have to be on top to stay on top. So how do you now manage that fear of saying, I've got to continue my success?
I think showing up every day is how to maintain and manage your success. If you show up every day and you are connecting to everybody that you are working with and meeting and crossing paths with, if you really connect with them, then you are going to maintain and continue on a path of success. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And many people fail and succeed daily. So if you put yourself out there and you know that you're doing your best, and if you fail, who cares? You just get back up. If you succeed, awesome, you keep going. Every day has to be about being truthful, authentic, making a difference, and being who you are, not who you think other people want you to be.
I think that's really important when you talk about authenticity. It really is about who you are. And I tell this story as you say that. I had a friend of mine who was a coach, and here's a guy who wore earrings, and here's a guy who rode a motorcycle, and here's a guy that had tattoos all up and down his arm. And he was really trying to bring in a clientele that was different than that. And once he finally embraced it and just wore he started to now develop a different clientele, the people that he was really interacting with on a daily basis and that he was riding his motorcycle with or getting tattoos from, whatever it was. And he was trying to hide his authenticity, who he was, his true self. And then really when he embraced that is when his business became even more successful. And I think you really bring up that great point.
Thank you.
So I got to tell you, I mean, this is really, you're a little ball of energy. I think anytime I'm going to have a bad day, I'm just going to call you and get a dose of some Tricia Brouk and allow me now to have that feel. It's like coffee. It's almost like Cuban coffee.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming and sharing your story, Tricia. This is something different that we don't normally do. And I just wanted to be able just to share your story, to share your successes. And for the people that are out there, I think it was really important for them to kind of hear that, some of these stories have happy endings. But if people want to learn a little bit more about you, Tricia, if they want to engage with you, is there a way they can do that?
Absolutely. You can find me at thebigtalknyc.com.
Awesome. And I look forward to working with you again really soon. And for everybody out there, listen to the motivation and listen to the excitement. I mean, when our dreams come true, it's something that's really amazing. But getting to your dreams coming true will take some work. It will take some time. It will take some failure and mistake. And sometimes you just got to leave the city of St. Louis and move to New York City and make those dreams come true. I got to tell you, I want to thank you for joining us on the Ultimate Leadership Podcast. I'm Chris Saballero, and I look forward to chatting with you again real soon.
Thank you for joining us. The Ultimate Leadership Podcast is a production of ChrisSaballero.com. You can interact with us by email at ultimateleadership16@gmail.com. All rights reserved.